lot of nootropics are very synthetic and they might have quite bad side effects, and I'll just leave it at that. But when you use real foods for cognitive function, like good fatty acids, like fish oils and stuff like that, I would say the lion's mane in that kind of a building block category. And then the reishi is probably post-workout, afternoon, evening, when you kind of want to, you know, you can combine it with your marijuana, or you can just have it with your...
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Anders Varner. Doug Larson's hanging out. Adam von Rothfelder in the house. We have like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers just collided today. Literally, Doug Larson comes to town. Von Roth showed up. Bledsoe's in the back of the car. He just went down to the beach to do weird Mike Bledsoe things. He's like breathing, doing something. Tero from Four Sigmatic. We're in Venice, and we're going to talk about mushrooms with the mushroom guy, the fun guy.
Yeah, that's what they call me.
That's what you're called.
Yeah.
It's kind of original, but kind of not but
really.
Also sticks really well.
Yeah. When people tell that joke, they're like, have you heard?
Are you the fun guy?
I'm like, no, never heard of it.
Yeah, that's weird. No one's ever said that
No,
before.
I didn't have a sixth-grade biology teacher.
Yeah, totally. I love that breathing, by the way, is the weird Bledsoe stuff.
Oh, it's going to get way weirder. We showed up to Von Roth this morning for Breaking Fast with the Von Rothfelders, and then Bledsoe had to get a little elevated to make himself normal. And now he's down at the beach, and it's not even 9 o'clock yet. 10
Probably
o'clock,
hyperventilating of some sort.
By the time
I think they're doing Wim Hof, so it's kind of
yeah, he's Wim Hof.
With a random group of people he met like 5 seconds ago. He was like, I'll go to the beach with you guys. See you later.
Yeah.
So weed, coffee, and holotropic breathing.
Yeah.
I mean, perfect combination in the morning on a Saturday.
It's a Saturday.
Good way to start your 10 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm stoked to do this because we did a good 8 to 10 minute riff on medicinal mushrooms about 3 months ago with Dr. Mike Isertel. And I have never been ripped on the internet so bad about some hippie wacko stuff. And since that day, and since you internet people destroyed us, I have been dying to get somebody that knows what the hell really goes on with mushrooms. Because my life, I've hated mushrooms since forever. And
You mean like you just hated them or you hated eating them?
Can't stand the taste.
Like
some of the mushrooms are cool with me.
mushrooms.
But I've hated the taste. And then as I've started to learn about them and your book, I have learned that maybe they're like the foundation for all of life. And we should probably learn a lot about them and not just what goes on with mushrooms and the medicinal benefits, but just kind of like in our ecosystem of life. It's pretty important. It's kind of the internet, the communicator of all of life.
Yeah. Before we get to the internet part and someone else ripping you off, we should probably start with the basics.
Yeah.
Mushrooms is actually not, it's just a part of the fungi kingdom. So there's a kingdom called fungi, and mushrooms are the fruiting body. So that's the classic like cap and a stem shape, and that's called a mushroom. But there's the whole fungi kingdom, like you said, is vital to life. So there is a few different kingdoms. Generally speaking, we think of 6. But in nutrition, we're mostly focused on 2. It's plants or animals. Like those are the things that we focus on. But fungi and bacteria are actually as vital to life. And obviously now I'm happy to see so much more of kind of the gut biome and the microbiome thing going on. But fungi is part of that. And for life in general, as we know it, fungi are like massively important. And the story goes back about 2.4 billion years. So if the world is 4.2 billion years old or something like that, and we've been here as Homo sapien 100, 200,000 years, mushrooms or fungi go back 2.4 billion years, and they were said to be the first thing to come out of the sea to the dry land. And for over 1 billion years, they ate rocks to survive. So what's funny about mushrooms, we'll just call fungi mushrooms for the sake of convenience. What's cool about mushrooms is that they are actually like half the same DNA almost as human beings. And there's a lot of similarity between animals and fungi. A lot more similarities between animals and fungi than animals and plants. And one of the similarities is that mushrooms need to eat something. They cannot photosynthesize their own energy and nutrition like plants can, so they have to munch on something. But there was nothing on dry land, so they ate rocks. So they're quite survivors, you know. And
so they would actually decompose the rocks.
Yeah, they would like acidic kind of like start decomposing the rocks to get nutrition for themselves. Mushrooms, by the way, also breathe in oxygen and expel CO2, also similar to animals versus plants. And yeah, and they started creating topsoil. And today, almost all plants require mushrooms, this hyphae type of a mycelium underground, to collect water and nutrients. So you can almost, wherever there's plants, basically almost anywhere in the world, there is going to be mushrooms underground. So that is the internet underground that helps collect nutrients, but also inform the plants, let's say a tree, about an intruder on the other side of the forest. And so there's knowledge there, and it's actually been scientifically proven. So it's like a thing. And then for us humans, we are made out of a lot of bacteria, and there's this symbiotic relationship between bacteria and fungi. The most common everyday example is kombucha, which is the SCOBY that makes kombucha is bacteria and fungi. And but also in so many ways, yeast and bacteria and fungi work together. But when something is a kingdom, not all mushrooms are good for you. Same as not all animals are made to be pets, or not all plants are made to be eaten. Some mushrooms can really mess you up. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that if something is a kingdom that it's automatically good or bad. It has both. So if you say you don't like mushrooms, the flavor, it means you don't like some mushrooms. But there's 1.5 million mushrooms estimated to be on Earth, which means that they would, if that's true, there's 6 times more mushroom varieties than there are plant varieties. So every red onion and zucchini in the grocery store, there's 6 different types of mushrooms out there. So when people think of just their butter mushroom, cremini stuff, it's like such a small sample size of the total thing.
When did this adventure start for you? Just foraging on the farm back in Finland? That's a lot of F's.
Damn. Say that 3 times fast. Foraging on the farm in Finland.
When did this start to kind of move into, you needed to learn more about this?
I've lived a few years in the U.S. and I find like Americans, I don't know, is it a Newton thing or something, like an apple falls in your head or something? Everybody wants like that one moment. Like, what was the moment when you knew you wanted to lift weights? Like there was like one moment. At least I don't have one. It's
the day that hot chick showed up, it was like, you look strong. Okay, I'll do that.
Do this forever.
Yeah, never look back. Yeah, totally. No, it's a series of moments. As a kid, I grew up in Finland at our family farm. I'm a 13th generation managing that farm with my brother, and my mom took us when I was like yay high, out foraging for like good old culinary mushrooms, chanterelles and stuff. And that was like my first interaction with it. And then my great-great-great-grandfather started like an environmental school in Finland. You know, we built nests for owls, and every summer we had to collect wild things, flowers and edibles, and dry them and name their Latin name in elementary school. So I went to that, and there was more mushroom knowledge there. And then from there, studied chemistry, nutrition, and it's been an ongoing thing since. But my first mushroom venture was about 13 years ago, randomly discovering, winning this innovation award for discovering this like acclaimed mushroom growing in Finland. But it's a whole nother story. But
well, we got time.
Yeah, good.
So getting to the 13th generation farm,
Sure.
what did you guys farm there? I mean, I know you were mentioning foraging. Mushrooms was there, but what was it?
That's actually funny. It's a good or alarming story of state of agriculture right now. When I was a kid, our farm was huge. It was like a massive big farm. Today's world, it's a tiny farm. So just in my lifetime, the farm sizes have exponentially grown. Like I have to have a massive farm, economics of scale, to produce food cheaper and cheaper. And when I was a kid, we focused on high quality with it. Like oats, like oatmeal is a big thing. We today made matcha lattes for you guys. We used oat milk is now a thing. It's come from a Swedish company. Oatly has come to the U.S. and you can go to cafes everywhere and there's like oat milk. But oats are a big thing, and for us it was also heirloom cows. So we used very fancy cows. One of my favorites was Limousine because it sounded cool. But it's like heirloom cow breeds that produce like really nice meats. And that was what we never had dairy or any dairy farm or anything like that. So yeah, just like good old classic grains that grow in icy Finland that can survive that, and then heirloom cows, and then a lot of forest stuff. So foraging for stuff, but also just timber, you know, it's like wood. There's like a lot of, you know, good income in that one. And it's a renewable energy source that keeps on growing when you're taking a shit. You know, it's their money's been growing on trees. So, that kept us alive, I guess.
When we start to look at the structure of mushrooms, you're talking about kind of the root system and how that is the communication. The first time I ever heard that, actually, I was watching a documentary on I think it was on like a desert, maybe something, and all of a sudden there was a whole bunch of like deer or elk that just like randomly started dying. And they realized it was because one tree was talking to another tree, and as the deer were eating the berries off of the tree, it signaled to the other tree like, hey, they're coming for you, and they started producing an enzyme that just mass killed this like population of deer, and they were like, how did that happen?
You're just inviting the internet to troll you.
That's
fine.
I
just
love
like,
it. Well, that was the first time I was like, oh, there's things I don't know about. Like, there's a communication underneath there.
Well, we just, I think generally speaking, like if we don't see something, we're prone to not believe it. But obviously there's a lot of stuff we don't see. Like when you're on a smartphone,
the internet's coming to hate you. Come on, internet, let's go.
Let's do this.
Using words like trees are talking to each other, like using that terminology is what brings on the trolls, because people think
you sound like a crazy person.
Trees can't talk the way we talk, but they still can communicate in some fashion.
So wait, this is an avatar? There's not like blue electronic lights traveling back and forth?
Well, definitely like different life forms have different forms of intelligence. It doesn't mean that they have our types of intelligence, but they have intelligence. Like and there's a million examples of this. Like if you just look at trees, how they start to grow in a certain direction to get sunlight, right? They're just trying to survive, right? In this case, there's this hyphae mycelial network connected to the roots of the trees that help the trees collect water and nutrients, but they also communicate of intruders. So in this case, that happened. One of my favorite examples comes out of Japan. They had this slime mold, which is basically a form of a mushroom, that they would put in a maze, and this mushroom found its way out from this fucking maze. What? And they've also done it, I think, both in the UK and in Tokyo. In Tokyo, they tested and they put like the stops. Like here are the train stops in the UK. And here are the train stops or the subway stops in Tokyo. And this mushroom built this network that had apparently some mathematician it's like better built than what humans built. Like it had more mathematical sense to how it was built, how that structure was built by this mushroom versus what we humans thought, oh, this is a great way to do this. So there's definitely like intelligence. It might not be the intelligence that we perceive like normally, but it definitely like has ways of surviving, just like more sophisticated ways of surviving and living. So and a lot of plant compounds, to just say that, is like anything from like the onion is to something like really dark leafy green. He has like a strong flavor. That's the plant's own way of protecting itself from other things. So a lot of these compounds that we even have like enjoy nutrient density in foods are actually the plant's own way to protect itself or attempt to protect itself.
And the fungus or the mushroom actually is also like a broker to delivering nutrients to the tree in return for carbohydrate from the tree, right?
Yeah, it can exchange nutrients, so it can definitely like it's not Wall Street, but it can definitely broker some deals underground, literally underground deals going on.
It's not overflowing in hair gel and shitty suits.
We're attributing a lot of human qualities to the mushrooms.
Yeah.
They're great day traders.
Yeah,
they always make a profit.
Yeah.
Look, while you're talking about them, I'm almost like imagining some of the things that you hear about, even like squid, and like how they intelligently find them ways and communicate and find their way through a maze. As you're like saying this about a mushroom, I'm like, God, it sounds like how a squid works its way through some of these problem solvings. Is there any of that conversation that goes on about that?
Well, to the earlier point of the internet attacking you, is definitely
I'm ready for you. Bring it.
I'll try to. It's like if there is a conspiracy theory, let's assume there's 100 conspiracy theories, and 2 of them end up being true.
We're fucked.
and then we assume that the 98 is also true, because they're like, if 2 of them are correct, then all of them must be correct, and probably the answer somewhere in between is like some of them might have legit facts, but then some don't, right? So same with mushrooms, is like they are incredible, and they can actually heal us humans in many ways, and we can talk about that in a second, but also they can help the environment. Like mushrooms can help break down inorganic and organic matter. So organic matter is they break down dead trees, or even if humans at a graveyard, they can help break us down into back to something more usable. But they can also break down inorganic things such as diesel. So basically oil spills, oyster mushroom can help with that, or plastic. They a few years ago found a mushroom on the Amazon that just loves to eat plastic.
So can they just put these mushrooms in like giant garbage piles?
Yeah, they're working on that right now. And the crazy part is that you could actually eat it afterwards, after it's eaten the plastic. But it breaks down inorganic matter, even like toxic chemical warfare weapons. But even though it has this promise, it doesn't mean that every mushroom theory is correct. So there are all kinds of crazy theories, like...
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Top 3. Top 3.
Like, should I say the next one?
Top 3 crazy theories.
Okay, I'm not saying that this is not possible.
Disclaimer.
Love it.
I'm not saying this is not possible. And secondly, I want to believe it. I just not quite sure that if it's true in the sense that it's...
Galpin's not here, so it's all good.
Yes.
Terrence McKenna.
It matters.
Terrence McKenna,
Yep.
who is every psychedelic guy's favorite. One of the theories is that through psychedelic mushrooms, as pre-humans, we were able to learn how to speak. So what we know of the brain is that we can only, currently, we use only part of our brain capacity. So as our brain has tripled in size, yada, 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 like even before, when we were less smart, if we could have used more of our brain capacity, we would have been pretty smart, right? So it makes sense. So his theory is that by using psychedelic mushrooms, we were able to learn how to speak and stuff. I probably think it's probably just had excess nutrition, so we just have more nutrients that we could use. And we were starving before that, and then we found ways to tubers or hunting or whatever to get more calories, and through that we had more ability to building blocks.
Well, that may be similar to what you're saying earlier about like Americans always want to have like the one moment.
Yes.
Well, same thing with how an organism evolves over time. It's not necessarily one thing that was like the big change. Like many things are happening simultaneously, and the emergent property of many things might have contributed to us having larger brains and being able to communicate better than other animals, etc.
So true. So if you look at evolution, even this short 200,000-ish years, it's like there's so many iterations. So if you look at just our own life, that is just a fraction of within that big picture of, like, let's say 100 years, how many times in our lives we've like improved, and it's like keeps on going. It's like a daily grind of going to the gym or studying or whatever you're working on, and you slowly get better and better. So then if you think of generations, like in my case, I often reflect to the previous 12 generations running our farm. We've been through under Russian ruling, the Swedish ruling, there's been a civil war, all this shit has happened at the farm, and the farm is just like, just within this few hundred years, so many things have happened. And when you start looking at like hundreds of millions of years, if not, 2.4 billion years, it's been a lot of adjustments over the course of time. And a lot of like cul-de-sacs as well, like certain life forms have come to an end and realized that this is where our road ends, and then another life form has like,
Something's got to fill the void.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I'm going to make a projection real quick and suggest that a large percentage of our audience wants to start hearing about the health benefits of mushrooms.
Sure.
So in your mind, like categorically, what makes mushrooms different than eating other vegetables, as an example? Like, are there special properties to mushrooms that have health benefits that you can't find with just eating meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, starches, etc.?
Yes, there is, and that's probably because of the DNA similarity. So mushrooms do have some of those. They're not a vegetable, but they do have some essential nutrients. Especially, I think, exciting is vitamin D, a non-animal-based source of vitamin D high in mushrooms, because mushrooms are same as animals, that they can create vitamin D on their skin. So if you collect the mushroom and you put it gills up, kind of upside down from the sun, it can create vitamin D2. And then we can ingest that. That's pretty fascinating. There's B vitamins. There's tons of minerals. But where it really gets exciting on stuff that you said that for human performance, there's compounds in mushrooms that are either in very small amounts elsewhere or not at all elsewhere that we can use. And I think the most fascinating for human performance is this group of polysaccharides. So poly mean complex and saccharide sugars. So obviously as the keto dudes here is like, oh, sugars are bad, but these ones absorb completely differently, and they're mostly studied for 3 things, partly because there's a lot of funding for these. One is gut health. Massive studies coming right now on how mushrooms being prebiotics, but also helping to improve gut biome. And we mentioned the bacteria and fungi having this special relationship. Second is immunomodulation, which is in the sports performance world, I think, highly underrated, and the importance of modulating your immune system, because when you exercise, your immune system drops, you easily get sick. If you get sick, you can't exercise as often.
I feel like that's the #1 thing that I tend to see whenever I look at the benefits of medicinal mushrooms, like the immune benefits seem to be one of the more prominent things that I read about that I don't see when I'm reading about other forms of nutrition.
Correct. And mushrooms do that to plants as well, not to take a side step back to the big picture, but they help with the immune system of the whole ecosystem. So it makes sense that it would help with our immune system as well, protect us from intruders. So mushrooms are studied a lot for cancer. Partly because there's a lot of funding. It's the second, main cause of death after cardiovascular illnesses, and also for when we talk about immune system, when our immune system is low, that's when usually cancer happens, and you need immunostimulants, and that's when you go to a health food store, supplement store, and they have the immune boosters. They all upregulate immune system, kind of it's lazy and kick it in the ass. But also now more commonly people have autoimmune disorders when they're constantly chronically inflamed and their own immune system is starting to attack their healthy cells. And this is where this concept of immunomodulation comes, when you need to suppress the immune system. So modulators are things that can do both. If your body needs a kick in the ass, or it needs to slow down because you're over-exercising. So this modulation that happens with mushrooms. So definitely mushrooms are probably the most studied and consistent actual food source for the immune system, and how that helps with performance is avoiding from getting sick, also possibly lowering inflammation. And I think that's super underrated, and understanding is if you're causing this stress into your body, that you want to recover as fast as possible to redo the stress or different kind of a stressor, that's something you have to have in order, and mushrooms can be really helpful for that.
How much of that process starts kind of with the soil, though? You talked about how it decomposes pretty much everything around, and I know that we have a massive problem with just the quality of our soil, and if it is responsible for decomposing, say, everything around us, is that influencing the quality of the soil that we're growing all of our plants in?
Well, mushrooms help create topsoil that is needed to grow anything, but actually the funny part is that almost all of the mushrooms that you want to use for your physical performance grow on trees. They don't grow on the ground. There's almost no mushrooms that grow on the ground that you use for, optimal physical performance.
And these are the polysaccharides?
Not really, but but if we look at shiitake, maitake, lion's mane, reishi, chaga, cordyceps is the one exception, but otherwise they all grow on trees, or should grow on trees. So they collect the life force. So instead of getting nutrients from the soil, they get it from the trees. And trees often also have this, not to go too woo-woo, but they have this different kind of life force. So if you look at bird sap, if you look at pine pollen, which is a source of free testosterone, if somebody there is interested in natural sources of free testosterone, tincturing pine pollen might be a fun experiment. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of the benefits of mushrooms are actually from what it has eaten, be it soil or trees. And the quality of the source material of course matters, like with any food. What has the cow eaten matters to what quality meat or animal product it is. Or if you have a soil for lettuce or tomatoes, like how's the soil? Same with mushrooms. So that's no different. But often the top mushrooms eat trees.
I feel like at the grocery store growing up, all I ever saw was like cremini, maybe shiitake. Shiitake was like the outlier. Cremini was kind of like the staple, at least where I grew up. But I never feel like I see chaga and lion's mane and reishi and cordyceps like sold as something that you should just put in your stir fry as an example. I see them all the time when they're put into powders and supplements, and they're sold as a health product. But I don't feel like I see them just at the grocery store on a daily basis, even when I shop at Erewhon or Whole Foods or wherever it happens to be. Is there a reason for that, or is that just because they're not as widely known in the public eye, and so they just wouldn't sell well enough to actually take up shelf space, or why do you think that is?
People know shiitake or oyster better than they know lion's mane. But if you go to the Northeast, you go to Vermont on a farmer's market, probably you'll find lion's mane there. But the biggest reason is cost. A lot of these mushrooms you find in grocery stores are grown in not on their natural medium, but often on grains or some sort of kind of like not laboratory, but quite commercial ways. So actually, funny enough, I'm a mushroom fan who is almost like tries to be a PR agency for the kingdom of fungi, but I can't recommend you buying mushrooms on a grocery store, generally speaking.
You can or you can't?
I can't.
So just farmers markets, or what do you mean?
Farmers markets are awesome. Foraging. There are the Erewhons and there are exceptions, but generally speaking, I couldn't recommend most mushrooms. The grocery store environment is optimized for vegetables, not necessarily always for mushrooms. And mushrooms can have also bad mushrooms in them. So mold. Mold is a form of a fungi, but it's the bad mushroom. So it's kind of this cosmic giggle, is it Mother Nature, God, whatever you want to call it, but it's like this laughing where good mushrooms are fighting bad mushrooms and vice versa. So, and also butter mushrooms, if you have tendencies to like candida and other things like that, it might make it worse. So actually, like the famous example is Tom Brady doesn't eat mushrooms because they cause inflammation, because the classic grocery store mushrooms can cause inflammation.
Yeah,
but if the top mushrooms do the opposite, they're anti-inflammatory. So again, it's like when you look at something as big as a kingdom, you can't say something is good or bad. Like, oh, plants are good or bad, or animals are good or bad. It's like it's a pretty common, it's a blanket statement that is not quite accurate. So same goes with mushrooms.
Did you ever growing up accidentally pick a mushroom that you thought was one species or whatever it's called, and it turned out to be something completely different, and accidentally ingest something that was harmful in any way?
Did not happen to me because my mom was pretty good at it. Also was always taught us to be pretty careful. But I have played with quite poisonous mushrooms. I think the closest I've been to death is kind of ill-preparing false morels. I knew it was a false morel. So morel is a kind of culinary treat. Sometimes some of you might have had it, and there's a false morel that looks very close to it that is lethal, and you have to prepare it in a certain way. You have to cook it in a certain way, and then it becomes a delicacy. But it's a risky play. It's a Russian roulette, and I prepared it kind of like half-assed it, and I don't know, was it placebo or whatever? I didn't feel great afterwards, but didn't die. But I knew
that's a good thing.
But I knew what it was, and it was in adult age. So yeah, that's it.
One of the first times I ever actually heard about mushrooms was in the sense of like a health and fitness paradigm was almost like 12 years ago in Iron Man magazine. They were talking about white button mushrooms and having a positive effect against the aromatization of estrogen. And remembering that, and then kind of seeing, Four Sigmatic bring mushrooms, in my opinion, to the forefront of the supplement world to be used as a supplement. We hear, like chaga, reishi, all these like cordyceps, these main ones that we're hearing as the supplements. But like, say we're at a grocery store that we know has good mushrooms. What would be the superstars that you would find in the conventional market that do have the best health properties out of like a white button, a shiitake, a portobello, or whatever?
Shiitake is the second most studied mushroom, second most widely cultivated mushroom after the butter mushroom, and reishi is probably the most studied. But it's a superstar, and it tastes great. It's a great source of protein. There's minerals in it, B vitamins. There's a lot of cool stuff. But it also has these immunomodulating benefits. Also, a lot of these top mushrooms are very high in antioxidants. So, you can find glutathione and other things like that in these mushrooms. So even like the porcinis of the world rank really high. But shiitake is number one. I would say the other ones is oyster. Also quite easy to grow. You can grow it in even coffee grounds and stuff like that. And it's delicious, but it also has a lot of health benefits. And then enoki. Those are probably the top three that you would find somewhat commonly in almost anywhere you can go to Ralph's or whatever Walmart and you might find in Oki. So I would start with those 3. I would, generally speaking, avoid the Portobello Cremini axes.
Which are the more expensive ones. You know, out of the 3 that you named, it's one of the more expensive ones.
It's not saying that they're not good for some people. They do have fiber. They do have essential nutrients, but just they're a little bit on the riskier. I think you get better bang for your buck if you go to grocery store and get shiitake. Bledsoe started a fire somewhere.
Yeah, it sounds like too much fire breath over there.
Fire breath. Combusted at the beach.
Is there any particular way that preparing mushrooms, if you're making a meal, like brings out the nutrients more so than any other way? I know sometimes if you leave something raw versus you cook it under high heat, it changes the nutritional properties.
100%. Don't eat mushrooms raw. I'm pretty much giving a blanket statement that no mushrooms should be eaten raw. Mushrooms.
All the salad bars right now in
the
world are like,
I never heard
holy
this.
shit.
We're trying to kill our patrons.
Old Country Buffet. They're out of business.
If that's even a real mushroom.
With certain mushrooms, it can remove toxicity to cook them, but particularly they have this cell structure in the cell walls called chitin. Chitin is also in the shell of a lobster, for example, just not something as humans are equipped to digest. So you want to apply mushrooms with heat and lipids. So that's why you put in a soup that has oils and heat, or you saute on a pan with butter. So the way how chefs prepare it is actually also the way to get the bioavailability out. There's also a way to tincture them using alcohol. You can use mushrooms to make pretty cool, like all kinds of healthier cocktails and stuff. But generally speaking, heat and fats are what you want to apply. And those help to unlock it. So you can look at mushrooms more like bone broth than you would look at them as like a raw veggie that you want to put on your salad.
Would the lipids that you're cooking the mushrooms also help with transporting like the nutrients, like you were saying that mushrooms are high in vitamin D, like and since it's a fat soluble nutrient, so is that kind of
so I mean again, there's many ways to slice and dice this, but generally speaking, like fats help with the absorption of a lot of things, including mushrooms. Vitamin C, that probably nobody in a Western world will ever be deficient on, helps with the absorption of many other nutrients. So the same with polysaccharides, vitamin C, having it in a smoothie or a blend with like some sort of a natural vitamin C will probably help with the absorption of them. So same goes for mushrooms. So
yeah. When you wrote your book, you laid out 10 very important ones, but one of the things that was super cool is the timing throughout the day and how you can kind of supplement that throughout your day for what you're going for. I know even at Four Sigmatic, you guys have like a morning, a midday, and a nighttime regimen. We're going to take a break, but get over to foursigmatic.com/shrugged. Go get some sweet
mushies,
coffee and tea. We're going to load up right now. We'll be back after the break.
Strong Coffee Company is a community built by people like you. People that take the time to educate and to apply all things that matter. Whether you're in the gym, the office, or at home, we want to help make you better. Introducing our full, rich, instant nutritional energy drink, the Cafe Latte. Visit strongcoffeecompany.com. Use DBS20 to receive 20% off today.
Welcome back to Barbell Shrugged. We're in the middle of Venice talking mushrooms with Tero from Four Sigmatic. And because I'm not that smart, I forgot to give you what the deal is. Go to foursigmatic.com/shrugged. 15% off your first order. Go do that thing, because now that we've got Tero on here, you know this mushroom thing's real. It's not just weird stuff that we like to talk about. Before we left, though, we talked at the beginning a whole lot about the root system and all the woo-woo communication of trees, but the actual flowering piece, I want to get into just like a little bit of the anatomy before we get into the specifics of each mushroom and the benefits of the top 10 that you've kind of laid out.
So if there's 1.5 million different types of mushrooms, there's many forms, they look different, but generally speaking, mushrooms have roots the same way as plants have roots, and those roots are called mycelium, and those are underground generally or inside the tree. So that's the rooting system. Then you have the fruit, which is called the fruiting body. That's what you're meant to eat, generally speaking. So let's think of like an apple in an apple tree. So the actual apple that you eat is called this fruiting body. And this fruiting body might have different pieces to it. The classic is just it has a stem, has cap, and then it has gills, but there's so many different forms, so not all of them are like that. And then there's spores that come out of the fruiting body. and those spores are the seeds, and those will fly somewhere and create more hyphae, mycelium, fruiting body, spores, and that's the circle of life. So, yeah, those are, you are meant to eat the fruit, so to say.
Is the cap and the stem, is that a different medicinal effect, or is that
Well, that
all
depends.
just
That
eat
all,
it all and it's all the same?
That all depends on the mushroom. Generally speaking, the stem has more fiber, a little bit less of the medicinal ingredients, but that's very general comment. So, for example, these chairs are Amanita muscaria. It's a red mushroom with white dots. That is your mushroom emoji. That is part psychedelic, part poisonous mushroom. That has a lot of myth and lore around it, and there specifically on the cap, just underneath the skin, is like where a lot of the psychoactive compounds are. So, so
did Super Mario know that?
He
Yes,
had to
that's-
have.
I mean,
no,
like,
that's why he's
it's
running.
obviously a red and white, and then he grows, and
Yeah, and that's why he is running away from, runs into monsters all the time. It's
Yeah.
because like
Right.
this one is one of the most,
Bowser.
this is one of the most, the darkest psychedelic mushrooms. It's, by the way, also legal, so you could. I'm not highly don't recommend going online and buying it, but you could. Highly.
Silk Road, is that
It's-
still available?
No,
is that still a thing?
and no, it's actually just straight up legal, but highly recommend if nobody to get into Amanita. It's
You
one
said
of-
it is legal.
it is legal. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you said
Yeah.
it was illegal.
No, it is legal. It's part psychedelic, also part poisonous, and it gives you the worst trip.
Call Mario and
Gotcha.
Luigi for your hookup.
Yeah.
If you want to trip while being poisoned,
Yeah.
that's your mushroom.
That is,
If you want to take it to the next level,
if you're thinking,
now you know how.
don't think about it. Just don't do it.
Yeah. So what's kind of the starter kit? You mentioned the reishi is kind of the most researched
Yeah.
piece of the mushroom kingdom.
yeah.
Fungi kingdom.
Reishi or reishi, both are right ways to say.
He
That's
just his way was right. Mine was
No,
wrong. And
no,
he did
they're
that very nicely.
yeah, you could do either one, really. But really, it's the other
But
one.
the smart people.
and it's a Japanese name. They're difficult, you know.
Yeah.
It's all Japanese names. Yeah, that's one is the most studied. It's more grounding. All of them have these pulsars that you good for gut health, immune system. So whichever you choose, they're probably going to support your gut health. They're going to provide antioxidants, and they're going to help with the immunomodulation. So all of them are same in that way, but they all have like special skills. What's specific about reishi is that it has these triterpenes that are really adaptogenic, which is like so buzzy these days.
That's
but
exactly what I was about to ask
Yeah.
you about. I feel like that word is really come into, I don't know about mainstream, but it's really like infused itself into the kind of the forward-thinking fitness, functional fitness community.
Let's start where that came from. So even though a lot of these plants and mushrooms that are considered adaptogens, and there's not, by the way, a lot of them, like a lot of things that are marketed as an adaptogen is not an adaptogen. So the original really research comes from the Soviet Union, where they commissioned this Dr. Lazarov to figure out that what can we give to our soldiers besides amphetamine or other things that will improve their performance, physical performance, cognitive performance, but doesn't give you the letdown the next day. So they studied them on grip power, they studied them on like cross-country skiing, they studied them on running, and they would look at like what can we give the soldiers that the performance will go up even a little bit, but we wouldn't have a letdown the next few days. And they studied originally 5 different things like ginseng, eleuthero, rhodiola. Rhodiola is a root that like Vikings took before going to battle, and that's the kind of the origins. Mostly from like the 60s and onwards, and it was all meant for physical performance. So there's a lot to be learned there. They don't offer, none of these adaptogens really offers macro or micronutrients. So you're not going to get a lot of protein, fats, carbs from them. You're not going to get a lot of minerals or vitamins from them. But what you have is these smaller compounds, the rosavins and the ginsenoids that somehow seem to modulate your body. So all adaptogens should be non-stimulative, so they should modulate your body. They should be non-habit forming, so they shouldn't be toxic or cause an addiction to them. And they should also like help regulate balance. So sounds like something that is perfect for anybody who like does sports or active physical or just wants to perform like at work better, because it's safe, it's non-toxic, it performs performance, but through balance. And there's a lot to be there, and I think that is definitely the next frontier, because it's not away from anything. You can eat any diet. You can be, low carb. You can do like You can do heavy duty style, you can do bodybuilding, whatever, but all of these will still help in your goals. And so it's definitely something people should look into adding to your own regimen.
Is ashwagandha a fungus?
No, it's
just an adaptogen, but not a fungus.
Yes, it's mostly used as the root, but you can also use the leaf. It's often referred to as the Indian ginseng. It's top, probably third most studied adaptogen after ginseng and reishi, maybe fourth, but definitely on top of the list. Mostly also studied for stress, but can have multiple other benefits because these adaptogens are non-specific. They're harder to measure because normally studies are done with a one marker. So like, hey, how does your cholesterol behave when you take this? Or how does this blood circulation, how is your VO2 max up or down when you take that? But with these adaptogens, at least the basic concept is that they work your body in multiple different ways. But yeah, ashwagandha is mostly for evening, reducing stress, but it also has antioxidant properties, immune supporting benefits, and stuff like that.
Oh, by the way, if you're listening to this and you want to see some of the research on all this stuff, we interviewed Kamal from examine.com, which is like a supplement review type site where they just aggregate all the different studies that have been done on all these different types of compounds. So that's where I typically go if I want to like see research studies rather than just like take someone's word for it. I want to see like what the actual science says about something. So for things like ashwagandha and even each of the individual mushrooms, like go check out examine.com. It's a really good research with it. It summarizes all the research so you can get it in a very bite-sized way. We don't have to like sit there and read through research papers.
And I love that they are so, like, they curate it so well, and they make it so easy, but it's still legit. I really love examine.com. If you don't want to go through PubMed yourself and just go through that jungle, which is also fun, but I really like examine.com. Yeah.
When you were recently, when you were talking about, or previously, you were talking about extraction, and you were saying like how they'll make tinctures. What do you find with something like reishi or chaga? I find that some people are doing like an alcohol extraction, where some people are doing more of a water-based extraction. I'm not really sure the other differences, but there'll be like a difference in taste. I mean, some are like so bitter, right? But is there a difference in performance or the way that they absorb, or is there a preferred way that you believe they should be isolated?
Yeah, there's huge differeces. So you think of like, hey, you say is like, oh, you should do deadlift, but then you go, what kind of deadlift? How many sets? How there's so many varieties. So sure, we can say that you should do deadlift. You should have reishi, right? But then it comes down to the quality. What's your form? So what's the sourcing of that reishi? How it's extracted would be like what style or how many sets or how many reps you do, right? So these all definitely matter. And I think the point when you start calling things good or bad, just like blanket statements, usually gets you in trouble. Sure, you can say some things tend to be better, but you have to look deeper into it. And mushrooms or herbs are no different. So extraction is a huge factor, and especially in these compounds that are hard, they're so sturdy. They protect themselves from nature. For chaga lives 20 years in Siberia or Finland in snow, or ginseng lives 6 to 12 years trying to avoid from bugs eating it. Yeah, they are sturdy things. They're usually roots or some kind of like a strong substance, and you have to extract them. And the general rule of thumb is that hot water helps extract the immune modulating benefits of them. So if you want immune support, hot water. That's the classic way to go. So you basically make a decoction, which is like tea is an infusion, and it's like a light boil. A decoction is like a long boil. Think of, again, bone broth is
like a slow cooker.
A slow cooker is a great example. And then the adaptogenic properties comes with lipids or alcohol. So you could use glycerin or alcohol like a tincture. That's the most common way. And if you do both, it's called a dual extraction. But now we have to get into like, what are you trying to achieve? But generally speaking, the dual extraction is when you get best of both worlds.
Which is what Four Sigmatic products are, correct?
Yeah.
Dual extraction.
And it's more important.
I remember you saying that on a hike one time. So.
Yeah. So it's more important for certain mushrooms than other mushrooms. And same with supplements. Let's take rhodiola, which is not a mushroom. It's another root like ashwagandha, used for a lot of sport performance. There's many kinds of extractions on the market. Supplement companies love to say their extraction is better than other extractions and whatnot. But definitely the extraction level matters a lot. So, I mean, it's no different from protein, for example, like protein isolates and the sourcing and yada, yada, yada.
What is the schedule we talked about as we were kind of going into break here?
Yeah.
Kind of the how would you partition the day out? Which mushrooms specifically? Clearly, you don't want to be drinking the Four Sigmatic coffee at 8 p.m. before you go to bed. But how do you kind of structure a day of the most ideal scenario of which mushrooms, which times?
So number one rule is if you don't take it, it's not going to help you. So if whatever's the way you enjoy taking it, is it with matcha? Is it with coffee? Is it with cocoa? Is it in a smoothie? Is it in a snack? The main point is you getting it into your system. So even a worse workout is better than no workout often. So like just get there and do stuff, like, and then just start optimizing as you go. On the specific mushrooms, to kind of like where should you start, I really like chaga mushroom, the king of these mushrooms, in the morning. It's super high in antioxidants, and that really gives, it's like the force field in a cup. It's like protects you from both the pathogens and the oxidization that happens during the day. And so I really like that. It's also quite neutral in the way, because in the morning you have energy naturally. You're like, you should already be go by itself if your body is healthy. So that's the thing. In the afternoon, midday, I recommend cordyceps pre-workout, or if you need energy. It's shown to kind of be a more uplifting mushroom. There's some interesting studies for endurance purposes, some VO2 max studies. It also has a lot of myth and lore in the endurance world of like runners using it for quite the spike. It was discovered because the Sherpas high in the Himalayas were observing yaks, the big bulls native there, eating it. They were tired in the altitude. They were like all pooped out, and then they started grazing on these cordyceps, and suddenly these yak were set to have like crazy endurance and energy, and then the Sherpas were like, oh, we should probably have them as well. So that one is probably a pre-workout or when you need energy. Lion's Mane is the one that has become super trendy right now in this like emergence of nootropics and smart drugs. So it's
got a great name.
Yeah, it's
why wouldn't you want Lion's Mane? I need that.
Use purely free-range lions. I
killed them myself.
Yeah.
Grass-fed.
We used grass-fed Malaysian children to collect the lions.
Send them out there.
Yeah, they're good. They're really quick on their feet.
When a lion's coming after you, and all you've got is scissors.
They give them chocolate before they go. They got energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They work all day long.
Yeah,
Just FYI, we were kidding about killing lions.
Yes.
Do not.
No, it's you just cut the hair.
Hands.
You don't kill them. You just chop it off.
Snip the hair.
Yeah, snip the hair. That one is more for brain function. So if you want like productivity, a lot of nootropics are very synthetic, and they might have quite bad side effects. And I'll just leave it at that. But when you use real foods for cognitive function, like good fatty acids, like fish oils and stuff like that, I would say put lion's mane in that kind of a building block category. And then the reishi is probably post-workout, afternoon, evening, when you kind of want to, you can combine it with your marijuana, or you can just have it with your, or just buy it, have it in a little cocoa. But yeah, it's a great adaptogen. Ashwagandha would go great with actually reishi. So if you want to do an evening hack, you can combine your magnesium, L-theanine, L-tryptophan, ashwagandha, reishi, make a little thing going on, and like really.
Someone is writing down this list of ingredients to make their own product right now.
Yeah,
they're pulled over on the side of the road.
Like, Tero told me to make this.
No, but it's like, look, like I think the best stuff you should not hide. You just say what's working, like the things that it's studied and you've seen good stacks or good blends. Like nobody should own them. So if somebody there wants to do a magnesium, reishi, ashwagandha, L-theanine, what else should we put? Chamomile, lemon balm,
little chlorogenic acid, some green coffee bean extract. Get that blood-brain barrier going.
Yeah, totally. At night.
200
milligrams of strong coffee.
200 milligrams of strong coffee. That'll be like $10 a serving. We're making the ultimate supplement.
Yeah.
It's my $1,000 cup of coffee.
Some Silicon Valley guy right now is like, this stuff doesn't exist.
It's $20 at Erewhon.
Yeah.
You blend it with the Bulgarian rosewater.
Yes.
And you get that $214 royal jelly from the freezer.
Oh my God.
You just put it on.
They had like a $100 bottle of water that they no longer carry, and I was like,
No, but they definitely have still the $200+ royal jelly.
God, that's
the best.
Yeah. When you were
unbelievable.
I remember hearing about cordyceps. So you were saying it was kind of some urban some urban legend, maybe a myth behind it. But I've heard a lot of stories about like Chinese like the Olympian,
the runners.
Yeah, the runners.
Yeah, it was Stuttgart,
Himalayan mountain climbs and stuff like that, where it's
Well, we'll never know the truth, but
right.
the how it became famous in the West was in the Stuttgart World Championships, I believe '92, and there was a group of Chinese female runners that were not as famous in the running circles yet, and they came kind of seemingly from nowhere. And they broke the world record. I believe they were the first woman to break 30 minutes on a 10K, which is pretty impressive. And they were like, "Oh, doping
fast.
for sure."
That's fast
yeah,
as fuck.
yeah, doping for sure. So
Right.
they tested them so many times, and they tested out clean.
All we can find is cordyceps.
But that's what the coach came is like this famous coach Ma Yunren just came out and said like, "Hey, we trained this much, like this many miles more than other people, and then we took a lot of cordyceps." Obviously. Especially if you've seen Icarus or whatever,
So
don't
there's
know
no,
what's
there's no
happening.
EPO used on that Chinese running team at all, probably.
Yeah, but they
Really high-grade cordyceps.
Yes.
But that being said, I would say probably they were if they took something besides cordyceps, I would assume in early '90s they were not the only ones who took stuff.
Yeah.
What's the American 100-meter runner, Florence Griffith Joyner?
Oh yeah,
Flojo.
Flojo.
Oh my God.
She's natural.
Yes.
Juiced.
And it's
Juice.
Totally natural.
How old was she when she died? Like 38, 39?
Juice to the gills.
It had to be her
And-
asthma. It
and-
had to be the asthma that did it.
I just remember as a kid is like Marion Jones, who was also got caught
Savage.
cheating,
Yeah.
and she was
Mark Henry, all of them
20 years later, and she was juiced, and she could get she ran like 10:68 or something, and the Flojo run 10:49, and like stopped at the end, kind of like started waving her hands.
Right.
It's like what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was easy.
It was easy. Yeah.
I have one more question. Actually, getting back to adaptogens just a little bit, because this is a personal question. A lot of adaptogens work for a very small group of people, right? But I find that with what I've read, mushrooms with their adaptogenic properties work for a larger percentage of people. Does that have to do, getting back to almost one of the first things that you mentioned, which is our DNA structure? That's why they work that much better. So something like a maca positively works for like 40% of people.
Sure.
Or
So
tribulus, but then
So I would say, yes, DNA similarity can cause mushrooms to be the best ever or the worst ever. Worst ever is that sort of mushrooms can really mess you up pretty badly because of their bioavailability, good or bad, but they can also be more generally available for a lot of people. The other reason why I would say mushrooms are good is the polysaccharides are really one of the most, especially beta-glucans, if you want to go and study them, they're one of the more kind of study thing compounds for human health in general. You can get them in, for example, the oats, which we used to farm in small amounts, but very high in mushrooms. So even if you wouldn't have the triterpenes, you wouldn't feel in reishi as much, or the cordycepic acid in cordyceps, you wouldn't feel as much. You would probably still reap the benefits from the polysaccharides. The other thing I want to say is a lot of stuff that is sold as an adaptogen is not necessarily an adaptogen, like triples, maca that you mentioned, probably are not quite as proven as ashwagandha, holy basil, ginseng, rhodiola. So like not everything's created fully equal. And I couldn't recommend people taking triples on the regular. So
yeah, I just feel like a lot of people a lot of companies are getting away with biased science to the idea of like, oh, this is going to do this, this, and this in like the smallest group study, and it's it's good to hear from somebody who has the knowledge.
It's the shitty part is that progress doesn't happen if we only look in the rear mirror. So like if we only look at what's already been studied, it's like somebody needs to be the pioneer and like. Somebody needs to be the Bledsoe breathing fire at Venice Beach on a Saturday morning, right?
Sounds like they put it out.
Trust me, don't go that far, though. Don't go that far. You'll be off the rails in a week and a half.
But somebody needs to be that. Like, it's like if
it's got to be an extreme.
If there's a pendulum, and we think that the pendulum swings from the other extreme to the other extreme, and we think like the extreme like optimist and the extreme negative or whatever, and then somebody comes and just throws the pendulum into the other place, the center point changes as well. And so we need these people who like experiment, and maybe 1 out of 10 things they do we end up seeing it's like, oh, that actually is legit. The 9 other stuff was like woo, but like, hey, that one thing actually is a real deal, right?
And you're kind of battling with Four Sigmatic, like a ton of people that are very focused on the negative side of this stuff. So what is kind of the message, and how are you able to get this out to the public of the benefits. Clearly, this show has got to be leading the charge for you.
Clearly.
But I mean, Four Sigmatic is you guys
That's
have been created an awesome business, awesome model,
The Mushroom
super
Academy.
healthy stuff. But when did Four Sigmatic start, and what was kind of the process of getting rid of all the maybe negative phobias that go on surrounding mushrooms?
Yeah, we started 6.5 years ago. We've been in the U.S. a little over 3. We did a lot of things wrong, and a lot of on the practical side. We were starting Strong Coffee, you know, like how difficult it is to make a food product. There's a lot of things that goes behind the scenes that as a consumer you don't always know. But the few things we got right was really, you know, with my background on our team is like geeking out on the ingredients and the formulation side. So that was like, it's like sometimes marketing is a tax you pay for a bad product. I'm not saying that's completely true, but definitely there's a factor. If you just make a legit thing, I couldn't pay myself a salary, couldn't do any marketing, but people tried the product, they loved it, they talked about it. So the good old classic word of mouth, doing like good stuff. The other thing that we did from the day one is just like free education, just not just on our products, but in general. And that really was like, we didn't even know about like whatever content marketing or fancy words or podcast was just coming out. But it's the thing is like, hey, now in today's world, you can share a lot of stuff easier than you used to 10 years ago. And that's the authentic way, like just sharing and educating, and it will resonate with some people, will not resonate with other people. For us, like we've not come out and said that, like originally our packaging had no claims because we came out of Europe, you couldn't make any health claims. In America, you can make stuff, say stuff. We still have it, instead of saying this will make your penis bigger and it'll fill out
Lion's
your tax.
mane, do that one.
Yeah, fill out your tax form.
Bigger and bushier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how you get it.
Like our product says, like our
Dick jokes.
our product
We're
said,
still 8. It's fine.
oh, I'm 9. I'm 9.
He's mature.
Yeah, I'm mature.
Did somebody say penis?
Yeah, I mean, our product says like a hug for your brain. Like we've never come out and said like our product will solve all your problems. Like that's not been part of the messaging. Is like, and I still don't think mushrooms are going to solve all the physical performance things, and they're going to be all the things that you're going to need, but I'm saying they're underrated. Like there's a lot of research on them and there's a lot of promise on them that you can benefit. And if you exclude a complete kingdom out of your diet, that's probably not smart. So it doesn't mean you have to have Four Sigmatic, doesn't mean you have to have chaga, but if you exclude a complete kingdom from your diet, that's probably not a smart move.
How much of the stuff do I need? Like if I am taking Four Sigmatic products, or like what is the dosage that is kind of like an appropriate daily amount? Do I need to just be eating mushrooms, like grinding and juicing and all of it every single day of my life, or is this a minimum effective dose of kind of what you guys are putting into the products, or do we need to be supplementing this stuff just all day long?
Yeah, probably like 1/5 of whatever Pledso is having.
That's a big question.
Yeah,
That's
no,
its own podcast.
we've I would say generally speaking, our products are dosed at like 1 is enough to give you a result, but you say like we say between 1 to 3, and they're already pre-packaged, so just like have 1 to 3. So morning, afternoon, evening is totally fine, but you can only just do morning. And what's important about these polysaccharides is think of them almost like a chlorophyll, is that you want to have a little bit of chlorophyll every day. It's not that you do like a chlorophyll overdose and do a green juice, you know, for 3 days and nothing but green juice. That's probably not smart, but you probably want to have dark leafy greens in some form or the other, be it in a smoothie or in a salad or next to your steak or whatever, every day, because that is a building block kind of like for your general healthy body. So think of polysaccharides the same way. You don't have to have Four Sigmatic, you don't have to have chaga, you don't have to have shiitake, but have some sort of a polysaccharide every day at some meal.
It would be
or between meals.
It would be ridiculous if we were in Venice Beach right now at the Shroom Room and we did not talk about psychedelics a little bit, right?
Sure.
I was like, we are in Venice at the Shroom Room.
Yeah,
we have to discuss this.
Sure.
And there's a bit of a revolution going on. Kind of, Michael Pollan just wrote a book. He's got a big voice. It looks like this conversation is kind of coming to the forefront of just mainstream and understanding some of the benefits and maybe some of the drawbacks. I don't know, but the conversation has become much more a part of our culture. Have you done this? benefits. How far are we going on just your education on that side of it? Because
Sure.
I think one of the things that it's maybe just the phobia of those are bad for you. Like my parents used to say that anytime we'd be in the park, like don't eat that you're gonna die. And then the next conversation is you're gonna trip balls if you eat that. So like
well,
can I drink your tea and have a beautiful afternoon?
Yeah, they're non-psychoactive. But
someday
it's gonna be a big day.
It's just like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. Every like 1,000th pack has a special dose of psilocybin in it, but you don't know which one it's going to be until you take it.
You won the lottery today.
You got to roll the dice.
You would literally feel like you are at Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory.
Holy fuck, it's a Oompa Loompa.
We did
He's staring at me.
April's Fools. We announced the product. It was an Amanita elixir, and this tagline was like an EDM festival in your brain. Yeah, it's possible. Maybe every 10,000.
There you go.
It's the same pendulum thing. Is like it's these extremes, and we love to operate in the extreme yes, extreme no. Like people are like, hey, everybody should be on psychedelics every day, microdose, right? That's the way to go. Or like, hey, all of them are bad. But I can tell that in the last 13 years, there's probably not one mushroom conversation where somebody's like, are these magic mushrooms? It's like,
if you say
yes.
magic,
yes.
They're
that
all
was last year's conversation.
They're all magic, though, right?
Yes, that's what I mean. They're all magical in different ways. But it is really funny to look at people's reaction. It's very binary. People get really excited or kind of really freaked out.
Yeah.
It's fun to gauge. But you're right. It's in the last 2 years, massive change has happened. Like people are so much more open to having the conversation. And that's pretty much the best thing you can hope for is people to ask different questions. Probably the same in exercise. It's not like instead of knowing what's the best workout system or what is the best way to eat, if people just asking like, hey, how should I work out? How should I eat? And just do their own thing. A few things I want to note, though, on the high level is that humans, for better or for worse, have had a history with psychedelics for a long time, like a long, long time. And different forms of psychedelics and magic mushrooms, psilocybin, particularly like has a lot of heritage. Doesn't mean that means it's automatically good. We humans have done a lot of stupid stuff as well in the past, but there's a long heritage on them. The other thing that it's to note is like, what's a drug? Like, what is a drug to someone else? Like, for example, Bayern, who makes aspirin, used to create heroin, and that was given to kids. Like, put them to sleep, little babies, heroin. Coca-Cola actually
hear
had
that,
cocaine.
Anders?
Yeah.
New dad tricks.
Yeah. But
take this.
And cocaine was in Coca-Cola for a long time. A couple popes even promoted cocaine wine. So, and then you go into the Ambiens and the Adderalls of the world that now are legal. Like how good those will be in 10 years or whatever. But mushroom psilocybin particularly is not legal in the United States. It's not something you can buy, or it's even legal to possess. So it's very much considered a bad thing. It is not known to create addiction. It actually built tolerance for it. So if you have it today, then tomorrow you would have to up the dosage massively to get any noticeable results. So it's not one of these drugs, quote unquote, that creates addiction problems, but doesn't mean that it's good and doesn't have other risks in it. So I think people are starting to more openly have that conversation and not compare all drugs equally, because some of them are quite different, and how we use them as humans as well is quite different. So
do you find that, or in your knowledge, do you feel that some of the mushrooms such as reishi or cordyceps or chaga positively affect the experience of being paired with psilocybin?
Yeah, lion's mane is quite a classic. Lion's mane combined with niacin is probably like the most classic psilocybin stack. So I'll just leave it at that.
Cool.
But lion's mane.
Talk offline.
Yep. Everybody's brain just like,
I got a guy.
Yeah, but mushrooms.
That is not 15% off.
Yeah,
That's full price.
Double.
B vitamins, we talked about vitamin C enhancing absorption. Like there's definitely mushrooms in general, the oyster and the shiitakes. There's definitely a connection between B vitamins with mushrooms, and there's also for niacin particularly, but like also other B vitamins, how they could potentially help with brain function, anything from helping serotonin production to other things like that. So B vitamins are definitely interesting brain hack in general. Also water soluble, so there's like limited risks. And lion's mane for nerve growth factors and generally brain building new neural pathways. Maybe, I think there needs to be a lot more research, but maybe benefits like neuroplasticity and other things like that. I think a lot of the, like there's a lot of in vitro stuff still, but there's a lot of promise in lion's mane for various cognitive, mild cognitive impairment repair and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, what's the word with matcha? Like why is that becoming so popular these days? I don't know. I don't really understand the benefits. I've never researched it though. I don't know what they are.
Yeah. So matcha is tea. It's not nothing. Tea is one of the most consumed beverages. All real tea comes from the same plant, so the genus is exactly the same. The differences between the black tea and the green tea is how it's been oxidized or non-oxidized. Matcha particularly is grown in a certain way where it's like limited from sunlight, so it really needs to like become stronger. So think of wrestlers out of Iran or Russia. You put them through a different school and they come a little stronger at the end,
Right.
So this matcha is like a wrestler from or a boxer from Cuba or something. Like they go through a different school and they come out a little stronger at the end. And what's the difference between green tea and matcha is that green tea you steep. It was the infusion we talked about. So you put green tea leaves in hot water and take it out. Matcha you pulverize super fine. So you actually consume the whole green tea. So it has multiple times more amounts of antioxidants. You consume the fibers as well. It has caffeine, same as all tea. So 40, 45, 50 milligrams, depends on the amount of matcha you have. So let's say a half of the caffeine of a normal cup of coffee. It also has L-theanine, which is an amino acid that is used for a lot for cognitive function and calming your body. We talked about it in one of the stacks. So, it might help give you energy, but give you brain power and doesn't like give you the jitters maybe because of the L-theanine, calms you down. Strong coffee has L-theanine as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's equivalent,
We know that. He tells us.
Yes.
Every time we're together.
Yeah.
But like the matcha, since it's so much lower in caffeine as a cup of coffee, it has like roughly 30 to 40 grams of caffeine. It has like 10 to 20 milligrams of L-theanine that are naturally occurring in it, which is like a big difference to green tea as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And much higher in L-theanine than in normal green tea. And I think the fascinating part maybe for your listeners is the catechins. So basically there's compounds in matcha and green tea called catechins, and especially ECGG, which is a compound that has some exciting, sorry, we're in front of people getting in. You can come.
Come on through.
Come on
Step
through.
over, Adam.
We're good.
You look friendly. Do you want to learn about mushrooms?
You want to be on the show?
Yeah.
We'll make you famous.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. Those pants are dope.
Anyway, just to finish the thought.
Stone Cold Fox.
So there's some exciting stuff on these catechins for weight loss. There's no magic pill. There's no super formula, but green tea in general has a lot of promise. Green tea extract is used in a lot of weight loss stacks and stuff. So matcha could be, an assist in healthy weight loss. It's not going to be a game changer. It's not going to make you skinny overnight, but definitely could help with shredding some pounds together with a healthy diet and exercise. So matcha could be great for brain power. It could be great as a coffee alternative. You get energy without the jitters, and could be help with some weight loss. And there's also chlorophyll in it, so you get a little bit of green. Yeah. It tastes pretty strong though, so just warn if you just have without almond milk or some coconut oil or something else, it's quite earthy. So
before we close out the show, are there any types of mushrooms or anything in this world that we haven't touched on yet that we really should include in the show that we don't want to miss?
I think maitake is probably the one that, besides the cordyceps and the other ones that we mentioned, maitake is quite commonly known in North America and sometimes called hen of the woods. Delicious, actually probably my favorite for flavor. But there's also some evidence on balancing your blood sugar and the absorption of carbohydrates. I think the fancy word is alpha-glucosidase inhibitor. But that also might be something if somebody's trying to like lose weight very naturally and use these small hacks that will give a little bit of an edge. Maitake might be fascinating.
Does that have a beta-glucan in it? Was that?
There is particularly these 1.3, 1.6 beta-glucans in it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're marketed as defraction. They're fancy names. Just another way of supplement companies try to sell stuff. But yes, there's particular types of beta-glucans that are found in maitake that might be found in other mushrooms that might help with weight loss, blood sugar, type of stuff. But again, weight loss, I'm not trying to say here is that's going to be a magic pill, but it might help, and it might help balance out blood sugar. Also, between like if you want a carbohydrate, take a lot of them and just balance the blood sugar. That might be one experiment to try.
Yeah, and for a lot of the stuff, you're going to have to go to some sort of food market that is not your normal Sprouts. Like you're going to have to go to some sort of farmer's market.
Don't talk bad about Sprouts. Sprouts sells Four Sigmatic.
Go
shit.
there.
Oh.
No, don't go to Sprouts. Go to foursigmatic.com/shrugged.
Yes.
Save 15%. Screw Sprouts.
Yes. Okay. Okay, fair enough. You can go to Sprouts and buy one packet, try if you like the flavor, then get the mega bundle from online. And
there you go.
You know, that's the way to go.
Where can people find you? Since we already just kicked them to the website.
That's the plays. I'm quite bad in social media and other forums. So Four Sigmatic everywhere. That's probably the best way to follow. I think that if you got interested in mushrooms and want to learn more, we have a free Mushroom Academy online.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you can learn through videos and 3 different courses, 3 different levels, and learn about the benefits of mushrooms for your health and for the environment. So if you are the internet troll that attacked you, whoever
jerks
that those people were,
shallow meatheads.
It really was only like 2 people.
Yes.
You blew that up kind of big.
Anders has been crying
very
about
sensitive.
this.
Very sensitive.
That's the thing about comments online. Like 100 people could be like, "You're great," and one person could be like, "Fuck you," and you'd be like, "God damn, everybody hates me."
Yeah.
We got blasted on YouTube.
Blasted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
YouTube does that. You know, it's
whatever.
It's
just the people. Just the masses. I'm not worried about
YouTube's
them.
the worst.
Yeah.
But I mean, you
and
do
they can
reach.
see you while they're writing like, oh, that guy.
But you reach
stupid
280
mushrooms.
million out of the 40 million Americans, right? So you're pretty big. So like you get 2 haters every now and then.
You know,
out of 280 million.
He does have hundreds of millions of followers.
I also highly recommend going what's the name of the book? I'm in the middle of it. I forgot.
Healing Mushrooms.
Healing Mushrooms. Go get it. It's
Well,
awesome.
and you have a kids
on
book.
Amazon.
You have a kids book coming out.
It's a secret, man. You can't.
Shit.
Okay, you heard it here first. There will be a children's book.
Hey, you should have told me that shit was a secret.
He's coming up with a game too called Super Mario, where they chases mushrooms around.
Yeah. Try to avoid monsters.
Try and find out which one's real.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for having me on.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for
Von
coming on.
Roth, tell us about the strongest coffee that exists. Strong coffee.
Strong Coffee. Check us out at Strong Coffee Company. I don't want to dilute the subject as we were just talking about Four Sigmatic, but you guys were doing we're having a conversation over there about some positive properties and proteins and instant nutritional energy.
Doug Larson.
And
It's fucking
It's
delicious.
delicious and it mixes well and it's good for you.
Yes.
Those are your 3 points.
I was
know,
ready
I
to
know.
jump in, but you went with the.
I know.
We don't want to dilute it.
I know.
I was just gonna go.
I'm sorry, but check me out at Von Rothfelder.
He always forgets to say that it's delicious.
Yeah.
I know, man.
It is delicious.
I appreciate
Doug Larson.
You bet. You can find me on Instagram, Douglas E. Larson. I'm not sure exactly when this episode is going to post, but I very well may have my own site up by then, DougLarsonFitness.com, and I'm going to start putting a variety of educational courses, which I really enjoy making, on that site. So go ahead and check that out as well.
Just set a deadline. It's going to happen for you by then.
If you put it.
Well, I don't know when the show's coming out.
Oh,
Soon. Next couple weeks.
Yep.
Late.
where can they find you, Anders?
At Anders Varner. More importantly, just come hang out on the Shrug Collective. We've got 5 shows on the radio, podcast, 5 a week. We got, 4 shows on YouTube coming out.
You bet.
Got a Traincation coming out. Proof on Mondays. Real Chalk Vlog Tuesdays.
Check out Ryan Fisher's blog.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
All the things.
Oh.
We're working hard, bringing you guys awesome content. And get into iTunes, like, subscribe, share, get onto YouTube, write a positive comment.
Internet
possibly.
troll him.
Don't
I don't
hurt
even
us.
care if you
Internet
do.
troll.
Hurt us.
You know what? Write a negative comment. I don't care. We're going to go interview the subject matter and make you feel dumb after you write it. So come write a bad one. At Anders Varner. We'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Thanks a lot.
Welcome to the Shrugged Collective Program Vault. Over the last 6 years, we've been leading the charge in online strength and conditioning programming and coaching. And for the first time in the history of the Shrugged Collective, we're combining our 11 best-selling long-term and short-term accessory programs into one membership site called the Program Vault. From Olympic weightlifting to strongman, leaning out, nutrition, you name it, our 11 best-selling programs are yours for $47 a month. Get to shruggedcollective.com/vault, and you will find immediate access to our 11 best-selling strength and conditioning programs.